Hi everyone, and welcome to another video on enlightenment and death. Today I want to really hone in on 6 essential meditation practices for realizing what the Buddha called the deathless. Discovering the deathless is key to the Buddha's teachings. It's really the fear of the death of the egoic self, right? If the egoic self or the personal self actually thought it would survive beyond the death of the physical body, there would be no fear of death by human beings. And that's really what I talked about in that video, and how we can realize the truth of that and the truth of impermanence. Today I want to really dive into concrete practices that can help you realize both impermanence and the deathless. These are transformative practices that we should all be engaging in if this question of our true nature is really important to us, is our most important question perhaps. But we tend to avoid these practices because they have the word death in them. And the fear of death really keeps this personal self hesitating in terms of engaging with them. But they are really to me the ultimate practice for us on this path. So the first is awakening to impermanence. Then that in itself really helps us embrace life. When we can come to terms with our unavoidable mortality and recognize impermanence as an inherent aspect of life, we can really confront our fears directly. We can awaken to the transient nature of everything, including our own bodies and minds. And through this, we really find peace within ourselves. We engage in the world in a different way, appreciating each moment, appreciating the preciousness of this human life. It helps us to loosen our attachments to the physical and mental aspects of our being, as well as our attachments to worldly possessions. Consequently, our suffering diminishes significantly. There's what I found was a real appreciation for each moment and the preciousness of life all around me. The other aspect of this is realizing the deathless itself. This is a profound practice that allows us to perceive our innate nature that is unborn and beyond death. The egoic self, driven by the fear of its own demise, associates death of the physical body with its death, as I said. And we're trapped in this illusion of a separate self that harbors a deep dread of physical death. And it's desperate to preserve its existence. The egoic self will go to any lengths to preserve itself. And since it can't be avoided, it experiences profound fear. And that's why we have all these various religions. Really, they're just another way for the personal self to avoid confronting its own mortality, and kind of a rationalization for its continuation beyond death. Enlightenment is intertwined with death. Birth and death are illusions created by our attachment to everything the mind tells us and to our senses. These create this illusion of a self that is born and dies. They're actually just appearances, creations in the mind. And the enlightened transcend this cycle and realize their eternal nature beyond birth and death. The ultimate reality is formless and timeless. And by letting go of our identification with this personal self, we attain immortality and take refuge in the awakened mind. So the question is, what practices can we engage in to help us to move along a path, you could say, in this process of realization? The deathless can only be directly realized when we're free from the filters of the egoic mind. That which ultimately knows the world or reality is this quality of knowing, loka vidu in Pali, which is formless and beyond the personal self. Loka refers to reality or the cosmos, and Vidu means seeing through. So this knowing quality of mind sees things as they are and not as they appear to the mind and the senses. So the first practice I want to share is from Guntang Rinpoche. He introduces it's really a meditation and a contemplation practice focused on seeing the truth of impermanence. It consists of 4 parts, and it's got an analytic component and a meditation contemplation component. It begins with kind of logically studying the definitions, studying the concepts. And then ultimately, once we understand it conceptually, we meditate and contemplate it and get a non-conceptual understanding. I'm going to provide a detailed outline of all these meditations that I'm giving. So don't worry about taking notes, and don't worry if you're not getting feeling like you have enough to get into the meat of them. I will, in the description, provide a link. So when the Buddha was questioned about suffering, he most often emphasized realizing impermanence. So it's a key part of the practice and a key part of realizing the deathless. So basically, the Rinpoche's 4-part practice really takes us through contemplations where we realize that death is inevitable. We realize the preciousness of this, of being born as a human being. We realize the impermanence of life, and we realize that the importance then of realizing our true nature. Again, I'll leave a link to the more details on that. The second practice that I want to share with you is what we often all call meditation. I'm going to call it the art of being silent or sitting quietly. To realize the deathless, we can ask 2 questions. The first question, is there silence here before I try to be silent? Is there silence here before I try to be silent? And the second question is, what is the nature of my mind prior to the arising of thoughts, sensations, or perceptions? So in silence, we don't actually seek answers to these questions. We pose them, we ask them, and we let them rest in the natural stillness. This inherent stillness is already within us, and we embrace it by releasing the need to attain it. Right? Fabricated stillness is fragile. I remember when I was doing jhana-based meditation, I was getting in deep states of absorption, and somebody would interrupt my meditation, and all that stillness and would be extinguished. It would be broken, and sometimes I'd even get angry because my meditation was interrupted. So the fabricated stillness can be very fragile. The second question that I gave you leads us to explore the medium or field in which thoughts, sensations, and perceptions arise and fade away. So this medium, if we want to call it that, is not an object, but the container of all objects. It's empty, yet full of potential. It's a present, space-like foundation for all of our experience. And this presence cannot be found within experience itself. It's formless beyond time and space. And thoughts flow through this space like birds fly through the sky, leaving no trace. And awareness remains at peace. It's always unaffected by whatever flows through it. So this open, empty, bright space of awareness is what we're tuning into and sensing into in this being silent meditation. The third meditation I want to share is body meditation. The Buddha really emphasized body as an object of meditation. It's the first of the foundation of mindfulness. It's one of the 5 aggregates that we contemplate on. It's throughout the sutras. So body meditation, to realize the deathless. The body and its sensations, they offer a fertile ground for meditating on the deathless. So we're letting go of memories and ideas and images that we might have about the body. Instead, we focus on the true experience, the bare experience of the body, moment by moment, kind of treating it as discovery, discovering it as an infant would discover things for the first time. We can ask ourselves questions. Where's this coming from? Where's this pulsing or tingling coming from? Is it within awareness or is it outside of awareness? Are we located inside of it? Is there awareness located inside the sensation, or is the sensation located within awareness? So again, the purpose is not to get answers, rational answers, but rather just to dive deeper into the experience itself. And by realizing the reality of our bodily sensations, we can really come into touch with our true nature. We realize that suffering only arises when we refer to a thought or a memory, right? When we're burdened by the past or worrying about the future and we're not present. And meditating with the body is a way of connecting us with a deeper aspect of ourselves that's beyond the physical world, the limitations of the physical world, and this cycle of birth and death. It's a gateway to experiencing the fundamental nature of reality, which is timeless and boundless and free from the limitations of birth, aging, sickness, and death. So deathless nature is not separate it's our true essence. It's eternally available regardless of what's going on in our lives. The third practice I want to share is called the Maranasati Sutta. It's a teaching the Buddha offered to his disciple Ananda as a way to encourage him to develop contemplating wisdom or the inevitability of death. It translates as mindfulness of death. So he gave 6 different reflections for Ananda to use as a meditation object in his practice. The first reflection reminds us that death is an inevitable part of life, that everyone who is born will eventually die. The second reflection emphasizes that while death is certain, the time of death is uncertain, and therefore we cannot take our time in this life for granted. The third reflection is a reminder that our actions have consequences and that we cannot escape the results of our actions. And the fourth reflection is about the impermanent and decaying nature of our bodies, which are not permanent or lasting things. The fifth reflection is that everything that is born must die, and nothing in this world is exempt from death. And finally, the sixth reflection highlights the importance of being mindful at all times, because our death could happen at any moment. So you can see the similarities between this and Rinpoche's reflections and contemplations. It really helps us develop a clear understanding of the impermanent and unsatisfactory nature of all things. And this understanding can lead to the realization of the deathless, or the unconditioned state of liberation from suffering. We can live more full lives in the present moment, and use the limited time we have in this life to cultivate goodness and compassion and wisdom. The fifth is called Gradual Training, the Anupada Sutta. It's a teaching delivered by the Buddha. It was actually instructions to Sariputta, one of his chief disciples. And there's really 4 stages to the gradual training that the Buddha instructed him to offer. The first is mindfulness of the body. So just as I described it. The second is mindfulness of feeling tone, and that's the pleasant, unpleasant, and neutral, automatic sense that we have for every experience we have, right? Everything is either we like it, we don't like it, we don't care. So meditating on that aspect of our experiences. The third is establishing mindfulness of mental formations, which includes thoughts, emotions, and so on. The fourth is mindfulness of mental objects, which is concepts, ideas, opinions, and perceptions, which is a key one. The Buddha recommended that the monks practice each of these stages sequentially, one after the other, and until they've fully developed their mindfulness on each one. And in that way, it becomes a gradual path, a gradual deepening of a practice. The sixth and final practice that I'd like to offer to you is Zen Koan practice. And this can be done in many different ways. There's lots of Zen Koans on the internet. I asked ChatGPT for some Zen Koans, and it gave me quite a selection to practice with. I engaged with koans for some time when I was practicing Zen and found them really helpful. There's a koan called The Man Up the Tree, which is meant to provoke the conditioned or egoic mind as I self until it's exhausted. The story involves a man that's stuck up a tree with his hands tied behind his back and his feet off the ground. A monk asks him to say the one true thing that can save his life. The man can't figure out what to say without letting go of the branch, right? The koan's intended to represent situations in life where we feel trapped and cannot find a way out. The passage suggests that by surrendering to the truth of the situation, in this case, the man's going to die, he can experience actual living for that moment without fear or anger and worry. Now, I'm not going to tell you the actual answer to the koan. It's something that we just don't do. But you can see how surrendering to the truth that you're going to die actually allows living to occur. By surrendering, the man had a few seconds of actual living without fear and worry. He would have touched upon eternal life, the deathless, nirvana. And in seeing clearly a situation, he could completely surrender and enter the deathless. So I hope you find those 6 practices helpful. Again, I know there's a lot of detail. I skipped over even more of the detail, and I'll leave a link in the description where you can actually get a document that you can use as a practice guide and tool. If you have any questions whatsoever about this, please feel free to post a question or comment. And I really appreciate the subscription. So please subscribe to the channel as well, and you'll get more videos on this topic. Thank you, and see you again soon.